Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another edition of Felony Friday, a weekly show right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Of course, Felony Friday is the only show where each and every single week we focus, we zero in, we laser in on the criminal justice system, and we shine a light on injustice within the system. We share stories of people who've firsthand been through this prison industrial complex, suffered from these unjust laws, and come out on the other side to achieve great things. I have one of those stories for you today. We're going to get to that in just a minute here. It's an incredible story. Before we do that, I want to let you guys know the show notes page for this episode is at lionsofliberty.com/FF152 because it's episode 152. Also, there's two other shows on the Lions of Liberty podcast feed. Every Monday, there is a show hosted by Mark Clare. It's our longest running program, our flagship program. Mark interviews leaders in the libertarian movement, and he hosts roundtable discussions. We have one of those roundtable discussions coming up this Monday, and it's a fan favorite format, I should say. It's called our Liberty Draft. What it is, it's the group of Lions of Liberty contributors, myself, Mark, Brian McWilliams, Howie Snowden, J.B. Lubin, and the elusive legal counsel Rico will all be drafting Liberty teams. So what we're doing is we're picking, going forward, looking forward to 2020, what players in the Liberty movement are going to have big impacts, are going to make waves, are going to shake things up, are going to set the course, change the course of history going forward. So we're going to be picking positions like who could be the libertarian presidential candidate, vice presidential candidate, who's one of the best libertarian podcasters, who's a great influencer, and other things like that. We're picking a Liberty all-star team. It's like a fantasy football draft, but with libertarians. And we're putting, the first time we did it, we took Ron Paul and Rand Paul off the board. We're lifting all those restrictions. Nobody is off the board. Nobody's off limits. You can pick anybody you want. So that's going to be a lot of fun. That is this Monday. So be sure to subscribe to the Lions of Liberty podcast on whatever podcatcher you use. I'm not going to name them. If you found this podcast, you can subscribe and get them all delivered to your phone. So that's Monday. Wednesday, every single Wednesday, we have Electric Liberty Land hosted by Brian McWilliams. It's your weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty. Brian just had his 100th show of Electric Liberty Land. That is a tremendous accomplishment, and as a fellow podcaster who is now at episode 152, I know even getting past 5 shows is a struggle for a lot of people. But here at the Lions of Liberty, all three of us, Mark, Brian, and myself, we've flown right past that milestone, and we are on our way to thousands upon thousands of episodes. So we'll keep making them as long as you guys keep listening. Just one more quick note before I introduce today's guest. I want to tell you guys about a free market alternative to healthcare insurance. So healthcare insurance, as you know, with Obamacare, with the market being just a cartelized mess, there's ways around it. There's better ways. There's something out there called health sharing. And there is this great group called Health Excellence Plus. And what they're doing, it's a free market alternative. It's a way to pull your money together for health costs, for healthcare costs, save money. You don't have these high premiums, these high deductibles, all this other crap. You can pay for things that you need and save money, not doing these ridiculous expenditures that a lot of this money doesn't even go to treating your health care. So you can check this out at lionsofliberty.com/health. All right, time for introducing today's guest. My guest today on Felony Friday is Lisa Hanna. Lisa is a U.S. Army veteran, having served 2 tours overseas. She's a graduate of Thomas M. Cooley Law School back in 1993. However, a little bit before graduating from law school, she suffered a very tragic loss when her son passed away. This led into a downward spiral of drugs and alcohol, which became a way for Lisa to self-medicate and numb that depression. She did eventually get clean, had left an abusive relationship that she was in at the time with her then husband, Scott. However, a little bit after that, Scott was busted with meth and marked bills and stolen guns. And as a part of his agreement with prosecutors to cooperate in exchange for that, he claimed that Lisa was the source for the meth, which she claims is not true. Lisa was charged with conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute a substance containing methamphetamine. She served more than 15 years in federal prison. And while in prison, Lisa wrote a book called Prison Bitch, which is a humorous memoir covering her time inside federal female camps and prisons. Lisa, welcome to Felony Friday.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you on the show. And our mutual friend, Malik, introduced us, which he's done with so many of my guests on Felony Friday. I'm always so thankful to Malik King for setting these interviews up. And you had showed me an interview that you did recently on a Facebook Live with another gentleman, which I was just blown away by your story. And after seeing that and reading your story on the Can Do Foundation website, I was just blown away. It's truly a remarkable story, and I want to get into the details of that, everything you've been through, which is just crazy. But before we do that, I'd like to give my audience, my listeners, a little bit of a just background on you. Where you're from, where you grew up, that type of information.
I'm a Michigan girl. I was born in Battle Creek and raised in Branch County, which is down on the Indiana line. Small town, small community. I decided, I grew up pretty poor. My parents got their GEDs when they were 31, so I wasn't really pushed to go to school or anything, but I decided from the age where little girls want to be teachers and nurses and mommies, I wanted to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. So I graduated when I was 16, and I joined the Army as soon as I turned 17. And I joined to be a legal specialist and became a court reporter. And I did that for 5 years overseas in Fort Hood, Texas, and had my son the first time I was in Germany. And then when I got out, I went to college and law school. My life was pretty normal. And then
not to cut you off, but what motivated you to join the Army? Is that something you always wanted to do, or what pulled you in that direction?
To get out of my small town.
Yeah.
Which it's funny how things turn around, because after all that time in prison, I'm like, wild horses can't get me out of Coldwater, Michigan, This is where I'm gonna stay. But when I was 17, it was like, oh God, I gotta go somewhere. So I left with my best friend. She joined the Army too. We both went to Germany and started our adventures. And everything was pretty fine and on course until 7 months before I finished law school. And that's when my son passed away. He was 9.5. He was my only child. And 3 days later, my grandma Hannah passed. And I finished law school drinking, and before grades were even posted and I knew I had graduated, I moved to Sacramento with my best friend from the Army, and probably within a month I was using meth every day. I was just that vulnerable. I had experimented with drugs before, but never been addicted to anything. I just lost my self-worth when I lost my son, and my faith, I'm afraid, for a long time. And then I started trying to get it back together, and I moved back to Michigan, Indiana. But I got back with the guy I ended up marrying, who was abusive and who got busted dealing and should have had a 25-year minimum because of the mandatory minimums and the prosecutors dealing for cooperation. He did probably about 5 years, and I did over 15 and was only peripherally involved. So the issue of federal conspiracy is very close to my heart because of how directly and horribly it impacted me and my family.
So if we could just backtrack and dig in a little bit into the details of your case. So At the point in time when, was he still your husband at the time that he was arrested, and were you still married, or were you divorced at that point?
We were separated. He had told everyone we knew if I ever left him, he would kill me. And I believed that. And I left and moved an hour away. He didn't know where I lived or worked or anything when he got busted. And yet, when he did get busted, before the DEA even left the house, he had told him that the drugs belonged to me. And we had absolutely no contact during that time, but they don't care. They don't care how accurate the information is. They call it cooperation anyway. And they made me out to be a kingpin without ever checking my bank records. They assumed that I was in contact with him when I absolutely was not, and they could have checked our phone records. They did nothing to substantiate the case. And at that time, the guidelines were mandatory. And as you know, the federal system has no parole. So they threatened me with taking my case before a jury made up of Northern Indiana farmers and explaining to them how meth was the scourge of the earth back in '99, we're talking, and that I would get life. And the feds don't have parole. So did I want to plead to 235 months, 5 months less than 20 years? Because of the weight of all the drugs from all these conspirators. They put 32 people in my conspiracy, and I wouldn't have been able to pick 20 of them out of a lineup, honestly. And they added all that weight and used that to determine my guideline level and put me where the low end of my guideline level was 235 months. And that's what the judge gave me. He could not give me any less time.
What type of legal representation did you have? Did you hire your own attorney, or was it?
No, I had a defender. I had a federal defender. And, you know, I try not to what if, you know, because I believe that God has a plan for me and that things work out the way that they're supposed to. And I don't know, if I hadn't done all that time, would I be clean now? Would I have survived reentry? Because it's a rocky landing. And, you know, people don't think that it is or it should be, but you know, when I work as an office person, and I've been gone for 15 years and the whole tech revolution happened during that time, there's some adjustment going on so many levels that it's hard to relate other than with someone else who's been there and is making the same transition, or someone who's done it successfully.
So what year did you go in then?
1999.
1999. So yeah, let's talk about that, the difference there. It's just technology wise. So 1999, were you even using a computer at that point in time? Probably a little bit.
A little bit. And I had the Motorola flip phone with in the leather case you could put on your belt, and then once you open it, you pull up the antenna.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's how high tech I was. Most people didn't have cell phones then. Cell phone bills were like $1,200 if you were roaming anywhere. So.
Oh yeah, I remember the first cell phones, the old Zach Morris cell phone on Saved by the Bell that was as big as a brick. But,
right.
So let's talk about, so you get accused of this. The prosecutors are building this case against you. At what point in time did you start to think, holy shit, I could actually go to prison here for more than a decade? When did that hit you?
I was, I was really kind of in a fog, and I'm thinking to myself, they never said anything in law school about people doing time in America without any kind of evidence. There's no physical evidence. There's no drugs. They never searched my house, and they had every opportunity. I had never even tested positive for drugs at that point. So I was thinking, there's just absolutely no way this can happen. But they don't really teach you a lot about federal criminal law in law school. So I was picked up out of state and transported back to Northern Indiana. and met my lawyer. And he was like, at first he was saying, I'd love to take it to the box and everything. And the next time I met him, he was like reading me Psalms out of the Bible. I was like, what happened? But it was so prosecutor controlled at that point, the federal system, because the guidelines were mandatory. The agents and the prosecutors would work together and figure out how much time they wanted you to do for whatever reason. Maybe it was because I had a law degree and they did not. Maybe it was because I had a nice hot tub. I don't know. But they decide who they're going to stick, and they did.
And were you practicing as a lawyer at the time then?
No.
Oh, okay.
I passed the Indiana bar in February of '98, and I was high, honestly. I was never sworn into practice before my ex-husband was busted and implicated me.
Okay.
So I never practiced before I got locked up, and I do now.
Right.
I just got my license last month.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome. So that has to be just the most satisfying feeling to, after everything you've been through, to pass the bar and
be admitted.
Be an attorney. I mean, being able to do what you want.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's everything I wanted to do since I was a small child, and I'm finally able to practice, and I want to focus my practice in criminal law with recovery courts, with clients who are in need of recovery or in recovery, and that's where my heart is. And I want to help people with federal criminal cases, because you really have to have an inside out knowledge of those guidelines in order to get the reductions that you should before you're sentenced, because it's set up so that you really can't go back and fix anything. I mean, there are reductions, or at least the judge can consider things like the fact that I was a veteran, the fact that of the loss that I had gone through, the fact that I was a battered spouse, all kinds of factors that should have been considered that just were not. Clearly I was self-medicating with drugs and alcohol, and I should have had a psych eval and actually asked for one. And I never even got one, because that may have reduced my sentence.
So was your sentence a plea deal, or did you take it to trial?
Yeah.
It was.
Yes, because they said if I went to trial, I would get life. Okay. And the feds don't have parole. They've not had parole, I think, since 1987.
That's incredible. Is any of that being proposed to change with this new, with the new prison reform?
First Step Act, yes.
Okay, I thought so.
They are hoping to change things right away, like women who are pregnant should not be shackled. That's one of the things that would be a horrific situation to find yourself in. They're also changing some of the laws that reduced drug guidelines and making them retroactive to people who've been sentenced, because a lot of times new laws will go through, but it's prospectively, where if you're facing time, that might affect your sentence, but if you're already sentenced, sorry about your luck. This is what happened to me. You won't believe this. So my sentence was 235 months.
Right.
I get all the way to the end of my sentence, 6 different places, and I was in the drug program. At the end of the drug program, I got a 1-year sentence reduction when I graduated, and then I got 9 months halfway house, the end of my incarceration time. So I did over 15 years inside, then almost 3 months in a halfway house that was horrible, and then 6 months on home confinement, and 17 days later, the law went retroactive that reduced all the drug crimes by 2 points on the sentencing guidelines, and my sentence of incarceration was reduced by 47 months. You heard me say 17 days after I was on probation.
Oh my gosh.
Because in the federal system, you still have that federal probation after your sentence, after the prison, the halfway house, the home confinement, after all of that is done successfully, you still have that period of supervision, which they don't call parole because they don't parole people. You don't get it off of your sentence. That's in addition.
So how long does the probation last for?
Mine was scheduled to be 5 years. And then when I went before the character and fitness committee to ask to take the bar exam,
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't let me test because I was on probation. I was still on probation. And so at that point, I went to the judge where my probation was, and that was the cat. And I put in a motion to get my term of supervision reduced.
Mm-hmm.
And because my incarceration couldn't be reduced 47 months, and because I had never even been written up the whole time I was locked up, and because it was keeping me from attaining my career, the judge went ahead and ordered my supervision terminated at about 22 months. Fortunately, that's was probably the first good thing.
That probably doesn't happen very often. That's great that happened for you. I'm curious. So going in when you pass the bar, going in front of the character and fitness board, right? And I don't know if you're allowed to talk about this or not. So if you can't, then don't. But how hard was that? What type of questions were you asked? I mean, was it?
When I first went in front of the board, there was a man there. This was February of 2016. There was a man there who was asking me questions about, do I remember saying what I said to a police officer in Kansas in 1998? Well, first of all, I was high. Second of all, that's 18 years ago, and 15 of that I spent in prison, and I've been dealing with bigger kettles of fish. Mm-hmm. So, and it was a very harsh experience. And what they told me was, come back in 4 years, or when you're off probation, whichever is later. And in the meantime, we want to see you continue to be proactive in your recovery and volunteer in the community. And I volunteer at the Battered Women's Shelter because I have experience in that. I volunteer at the local women's halfway house mm-hmm. because I have experience in that. And so when my paper was cut off at 22 months, I thought, no way they're going to let me, but it's worth a shot. So I wrote back to Character and Fitness. They had new members by then. And they said, yeah, come on down and talk to us. And I went down and they said, yeah, you can apply for it next time. So I ended up, I'm not supposed to be off probation until October 15th of 2020. And I have a law degree. I have a law license.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is my cat.
That's great.
The loud one.
Yeah. The cat has something to say too.
Yeah. So it was an uphill battle. Being told come back in 4 years was, knocked the stuffing out of me for a little bit, but I have such a strong support group around me and people I can bounce things off of who are just determined to not let me give up on myself. And I did it. I stuck with it and I saw it through and I did it. And that's the most important thing when you get out, is to surround yourself with people who are where you want to be, or at least know where you want to be and care to see you get there. Mm-hmm. Going home to the same old, they say in recovery, people, places, and things, nothing to be gained by that.
That's such important advice for all parts of life. I mean, and people, it's funny. I mean, even some of the people that are closest to you will try to hold you down or pull you back. So it's tough.
Yeah.
You have to surround yourself with people who are supportive and positive and are going to cheer you on as you chase your dreams, which is awesome. That's
Yeah.
you have. That's so important. So I want to ask you about, and maybe you had support, I'm sure you did for this as well, the book that you wrote in prison.
Yeah.
What was the motivation for that? And tell us a little bit about, what your goals and objectives were when you were writing that book.
Well, one thing was to vent. It was kind of cathartic. At that point, I was locked up for over 11 years and was up to here with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And just needed to, sit in my room. I wrote it longhand. And it just came out.
Was that because you didn't have access to a computer or just because you wanted to write it that way?
Both. I mean, I could have typed it, but the only computers were where people wanted to go and get their email too. And so that's, I didn't want to waste their resources. And it was okay for me. Maybe that was part of the process that I needed then. But the reason was actually because they have people from the local community who go visit inmates. It's called prison visitation support. And a lady who came in to see me when I was in Florida and a long ways from my family told me about her daughter who was sentenced for a money crime federally, and her sentence was 2 years or less. And rather than turn herself in, she had committed suicide. And that just weighed very heavily on me. And I thought, I've done 11 years of this, and it's a lot of crap, and it's far from my family, but certainly I've made it through it, and I'm in better condition than I was coming in just because of choosing to be clean and sober, because, you have access to the whole gamut of things, especially in camps or behind a fence even, because of they pay officers to bring things in, that's no secret. So I just wanted to share that if I can do this, you can do this. If I can do this and I'm in my 11th year, you can do it for, a couple of months, you can do it for 20 years. If you have to do it, you can do it. And it's just humorous and mostly pokes fun at 20 different aspects of life inside women's federal prisons and camps. For everything from the food to the laundry to the staff to, other inmates, anything you can think of is pretty much in there, and I'm picking on it, even including myself. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it is about the really enduring friendships that are forged there, and the things that you have in common with people, and the things that you learn in common with people, and the ability to interact with people from such diverse cultures and learn so much, and other ways about positively spending my time, trying to do constructive things, and a lot of those things being finding ways to stay connected with my family because I was so far away. When you're in federal prison, you're not in the state that you're from typically, especially if you're a woman. There are only so many women's federal facilities. Right. So when I got locked up, I'm from Michigan. They put me behind a fence. The only facilities like that available then were Connecticut, Texas, Florida, and California. That's not close to Michigan. So that means, you're not getting visits, and you have to learn to get by with that. I mean, fortunately, the telephone system evolved, so I didn't have to keep calling collect forever.
Mm-hmm. So how else did you keep in touch? Just through phone calls, writing letters, things like that?
And I learned or relearned how to crochet and then knit, and then I taught people how to do those things. Mm-hmm. But mostly I would find patterns and I would make things for my family, my sisters, my brother, my sister-in-law, mm-hmm. All my nieces and nephews, my mom, my stepdad, and mail them home. Most of the money I got in prison went to yarn and postage, and instant coffee. But, and I would be making things that the kids either requested or that I wanted to surprise them with. And then I got good enough. Actually, I could design my own things and make up things for them out of my head. And actually, I sold a crochet pattern to a magazine while I was locked up.
Oh, wow.
Something I made for my family. Yeah. So there are lots of different ways of being productive and making productive use of your time there. And the whole time I was working on a project for someone I love, I just feel close to that person. And that's, that kept me going. That kept my heart from turning into a cold, hard pit, I guess. And give me a lot of time to think and work on forgiveness. And I don't even use the word hate. And there were some shady characters in my life. And hopefully they've all had an opportunity to reflect and change too. I don't know.
Well, that's a testament to you. And, I don't know if I could forgive that easily. I know that I'm a Christian and I try to, but after being through something like that, I'm sure it was not easy for you to get to that point. But I just want to ask you a couple more questions. I know we're running short on time here, but so if somebody's listening, or maybe a family member of someone listening who's about to go into prison, or maybe they're in prison, what sort of advice would you have for that family member on how best to help out, how to help that individual behind bars cope?
First of all, send them my book, because what it does, I think, is take away the fear of the unknown. And that's a very powerful fear. Mm-hmm. When you're going into something for a stretch that you don't even know how long it could turn out to be, and have absolutely no idea what's on the other side of the door on your bus, then you're frightened, no matter how tough you act. And I was, one who didn't cry in front of people and all that too, but it's scary. And I tried to address all those things, like, okay, so then I went here and this happened, and this is how I dealt with it. And maybe this is how I should have dealt with it. Mm-hmm. But, or things that you see that I saw other people do. I think